Good morning. We have just finished recording a careers chat for the school that I work in, and we felt that it was such fun and so interesting that we thought we would like to share it with you. So here is our careers chat with Gary, Nicky, Joe and Laura. I was thinking about careers that don't necessarily jump to mind. We've done some fairly standard kind of career format so far. So I am pleased to introduce to you some ideas of careers in the Church of England. We have, down on my left-hand corner, we've got Canon Reverend Gary Philbrick, who's our rector. Next to him is Joe Heath, who is our youth, children and families worker.
Hi.
And then above her, to the right of my screen, is Laura Cowdery, who's our communications officer. And then over to my left is Rev Nicky Davies. So, we'll go in the format that we said. Would you like to tell us a bit about yourself, Gary?
Yep, I'm perhaps the oldest here. I can't quite tell from the others. I've been around quite a long time.
We'll go with that.
Grew up in the north of England, Cheshire. Lived in Scotland, Buckinghamshire, and then I spent probably about 3/4 of my life living in Hampshire, around Southampton, Fawley, Fordingbridge, back in Southampton again, all sorts of places.
Excellent. Joe?
So I grew up in Watford. I then went to Exeter University and I ended up meeting someone who brought me down to Christchurch in Dorset.
I did not know you grew up in Watford. I grew up in Northwood. Really close by. I have to catch up on that. Laura?
Hi, I'm Laura Cowdery. I grew up about an hour away from here, something that I don't often like to talk about, a place called Basingstoke. It's where I was born, Amazingstoke, otherwise known as. And then ended up around here after travelling, and my parents moved here, and after having children I moved progressively closer to them to steal all their childcare support, and love it here. I've got 3 children and I work for the church, and that's me.
Great, thank you. And Nicky?
Hi, so I'm a Surrey girl, born in Guildford, but grew up very near Basingstoke in a little village called Overton. My first job was working as a Saturday assistant in Basingstoke Library, which I absolutely loved.
I know that place.
The area. Yeah, and my brother still lives that direction, so know Basingstoke really well. I am married to Matt. We've been married for 30 years this year, which is an amazing achievement. I think I can't believe it. I've got 2 daughters, 2 grown-up daughters, aged 26 and 24. Hobbies, wild swimming, love getting into rivers or sea or any water that I can get into, really.
Excellent, great stuff. I like that we're all making these geographical connections. So Nicky's told us about her first job, which was in Basingstoke Library. Gary, what was your first job?
Well, I had an early series of jobs. The very first one was when I was about 8 or 9. I had a rather unusual childhood, which involved roaming the streets early in the morning. So I got a job as a milk boy. 1 and 3 a week, I think it was, which is about 7.5 pence or something in new money. And then later that, I worked in a shoe shop for a while as well in High Wycombe while I was growing up. That was my first sort of proper Saturday job, as it were.
Okay, interesting. Great stuff. Joe?
So my dad owned restaurants. So my first job was actually helping him in, he had a sort of B&B and a shop at the same time that did takeaway. So I used to do cleaning, room cleaning in the B&B, and I used to help him in the shop with takeaway. So I used to work with him on a Friday and Saturday night, which was brilliant. Then he opened the restaurant, and I ended up doing sous chefing for him. So that was my first sort of job.
Awesome. So that's good skills to take with you through life, eh, sous chef? It's very exciting.
Definitely.
And Laura, what was your first job?
So I was 13. I used to cycle about 5 miles from my house because we lived in the middle of nowhere. And I worked in a pub washing up, and my main job was to take the beards out of mussels. You know, when people eat moules marinier, some poor soul has to rip out the muscles of each one, and I would get a sink full about this high and have to pull them out one by one, and sometimes just get a really bad smelly one. So I could never eat those. And so I did the washing up as well, and I pulled out the really hot trays from the dishwasher, and my hands to this day are really horrible and raw from doing that job. So yeah, that was lovely, but it earned me you know, £1 an hour or something. As well as in the choir, I was in the church choir, and we'd get £2 for weddings on a Saturday. So that's
very lucrative.
My other first. What's that?
Very lucrative. £2 for a wedding. That's a lot.
Yeah, that's really fun, isn't it? I guess doing the muscles as well, but they're probably cold hands too, hey?
Yeah, going from cold to hot. Yeah.
Dear, oh dear.
Not my best feature.
Nicky, what sort of drove you to get a job in the library?
Oh, I have always loved English. Always loved stories, loved writing stories, love books, still love books, love the printed word. Yeah, so for me, that was just the best job ever. I absolutely loved it. I think I was a little bit of a geek. I used to sit there and just read books. Yeah, every break time we would all be there sitting reading our books and then going out and dealing with more books. It was fantastic. But I did other jobs. I mean, I think the thing is, if you're of that sort of mind, you know, you can make your mind up, you want to get out there and do things, and I did. I certainly did a paper round for a while. I did also work in a pub, which actually I really enjoyed because it was really sociable, you know, so I really like that as well. So yeah, I've done a mixture of stuff, but yeah, I guess the Saturday, that was my proper first sort of job in the library.
Great, I can see you there actually. I can totally imagine that and visualize that. So Gary, did you always have a calling to priesthood?
Well, I had rather delinquent first part of childhood, but I always thought my parents took it rather well when I was about 13 and said I thought I might be having a calling to ordination. It was only quite late on in their lives that I discovered they were absolutely flabbergasted at the time, but they covered it really well. But I went on to study music at university. I did a teacher training. I was a primary school teacher, which I loved, and which has got many kind of crossover skills to ministry. But this sort of sense of calling stayed with me. So from 13 to I was 26 when I went away to do theological training. So quite a long time of deliberation before it got anywhere.
Yeah, it's interesting. What made you choose teaching first then?
I can't remember that far back. Why did I choose teaching? I think it was just something I thought I would enjoy. I was in the unusual position of training to do secondary music and RE, and then realising on the what do you call those things in schools? What do you call them? Placements, the
Right.
teaching placements. That actually I didn't fancy secondary because music and RE. You see lots and lots of children in a large secondary school, hundreds. Even on the placement, I was seeing about 500 children a week or something, and I felt I wanted something rather more intimate. I had this rather chanting idea that junior school children, you just have to raise an eyebrow and they would be silent, and that turned out not to be quite the case. But in those days, I didn't need to retrain. My secondary training, right, weirdly, allowed me to teach in a primary school, and I got a job in the school where I was already living, in a village called Otterbourne, just outside Winchester. Taught there for about 5 years or so. And I was the organist of the church, so my house, the church and the school were all about 100 yards apart in those days.
That must have kept the children in check as well, if they knew that Sarah was likely to be wandering around outside the school.
That was an interesting part of life. It was a little bit like being a vicar, actually, in that work and life and teaching and school and everything, they're all part of one thing. There wasn't a sort of separation between work and all the rest of life.
No, interesting. That's really fun. Jo, how about you? Have you always wanted to work with families, youth, children?
Sorry, can I just go back to Gary's point there? Because Gary told me that when he went to see his careers officer at school.
Oh yes, I forgot about this.
Yes, you've forgotten it, and that's really crucial to your story. So I think.
Well, it is careers advice being what it was. This was in the 70s. I went to see the careers advisor and said, I think I've got a calling to ordination. And he said, oh, I haven't got a leaflet about that. How about teaching? And so he gave me a leaflet for that instead. So I assume that the careers advisor at Embley is better than that, but who knows?
She is. She's amazing. Really good. Yes, I'd forgotten that. I knew that there was something funny about how you sort of fell into teaching. Go on then, Jo.
So I've been was in teaching for 17 years before I worked for the church, as it were. But I used to teach for 17 years. I taught international students. So I met people from all over the world, all the far-flung places you can think of. And I probably taught a student from there at one time or another. And I love that because, like Nikki, I love language. So I was an English language teacher, and I still love language. That never goes away, actually, does it? And then I managed a training provision for almost 3 years for 16 to 19-year-olds, for children who hadn't, or young people who hadn't got their GCSEs, which that was a brilliant time in my life. But I kind of already knew at that stage that I was looking for something else, that I was moving outside of teaching. And so when the job came up at ABC, Nicky said to me, "Why don't you apply for it?" I said, "Because I don't want to work with children. I've got 2 of my own, that's enough." To be fair though, I had been running Sunday school for 8 years, and goodness knows what else as well. I'd already been I've always worked with young people. I think all of my work in life has been with young people, but I'd only really got to working with young sort of children, particularly toddlers, but also school-age children, as a result of teaching Sunday school. So yeah, so Nicky said, "Why don't you apply?" And I sort of ummed and ahed, and then I said, "Oh, why not? You know, you never know. I probably won't get it." Well, actually, Nicky, I think I remember the conversation. You said no one's applied. I think you should apply. Thanks.
I think your arm.
And I was like, "Oh, what harm can it do? No one else has applied, so it's fine. You know, there's a pretty good chance."
If you hadn't gotten it, that would have been awful, wouldn't it?
Yes, that would have been. Yeah. Well, that did happen in the previous round.
Sorry, Gary.
That did happen in the previous round.
Really fortunate to get. I've loved every minute of actually being a Youth, Children and Families worker. I remember, I have to tell you, a very weird moment in amongst all of this. After I'd spoken to Nicky, after I was thinking about applying and so on and so forth, and I was talking to a colleague of mine at my college, and I said to him, "You know, lots of people say they think I'd be a really good Youth, Children and Families worker, but you know, I'm not feeling it." And then at that moment, I was struck by this feeling of absolute stupidity. Like, why am I resisting? So if someone's saying to me, "I think you'd be really good," it wasn't just Nicky, it was this other person in question, why would I not just give it a go and see what it brought me? And so that was how I ended up where I am now, loving it, every minute of it.
Good, and that's a really good way of sort of looking at it for our students. Give it a go. If you might like it, try it. Sort of the don't ask, don't get kind of theory, isn't it? Right, Laura.
So I think you're really, really lucky in life if you absolutely know what you want to do from the outset. And I wasn't one of those people. I was always really jealous of those people. But some of the best, or one of the best pieces of advice somebody gave me was do what you love. And your career spans whatever, 20, 30, sometimes 40, 50 years. So picking subjects that you love for a start was a great piece of advice that somebody gave me, and then the rest hopefully will fall into place. So I followed that advice, and the things I loved were, like Nicky and Jo, I loved writing and reading and language and words, and also music, like Gary. And so I chose those 2 subjects. Originally had a really ridiculous fantasy of being a singer-songwriter. Never had the courage or the confidence to do that. Just, you know, they stayed in my room, those songs. And then I thought, oh, well, what can I do to combine those 2 subjects? I know I'll be a music journalist. So I started out doing that. For my university degree, I chose English and music together because I didn't know which way I was going to go. I thought, well, I'll do them both. And it'll figure itself out. And sure enough, after starting out doing music journalism and just other journalism and doing various kind of jobs for festivals and record label, you know, that all made sense. But then years later, after having children, I started working for a charity through a friend of a friend. And I remember Mark saying something about this in either a Saturday conversation or maybe it was a thought for the day, but once you start doing meaningful work, it becomes actually quite addictive. The feeling that you get from reaching out and from helping. And I don't know what it's like to make a sale, to like make a big buck in one of those kind of salesy type jobs, but I imagine it's a pretty good feeling. But for me, the sense of doing something meaningful and helpful and making a difference is so huge that I think it motivated me, it changed me, it started to become really, really important to me. And so I loved working for charity. And then I began to pray and I asked God, you know, what can I do? What else can I do that is meaningful? Just help me find what it is. And this is where you have to dig deep, because sometimes you have to wait a long time for those answers to come. And eventually I made connections, like I met Joe, I helped out in Messy Church. I was always involved with kind of one of those yes people that was very difficult to say no to people. So I would kind of say, okay, I'll do it. When it came to preschool or school, I always got stuck in and involved. So yeah, I kind of made a lot of connections through the church that way. And then, so what was that, 6 months ago now, there was an advert that came up and I thought, well, I could use my skills here. Why not go for it? And so that's why I'm here. And I'm really loving it.
Good, excellent. Okay, so on to Nikki. And Nikki, don't think you're going to get away without making your music link.
What a funny wink you're giving me. What's the music?
You're a DJ.
Oh, all right. I mean, I think I'm a person who loves to have a go. Like you said, you know, if you feel like it's something you want to have a go at, have a go, you know. And I've always been a bit like that, I suppose. So my first full-time job was working for a TV company, producing corporate videos, which I loved for a while. But then I pretty quickly decided I didn't really want to be a secretary. So I got a job working as a trainee reporter on a newspaper. Now, I hadn't gone to university or anything like that. I did A-levels, and then I was desperate to leave, get out of education. Didn't want to do that anymore. Had enough of that. Wanted to go to work. And so I did on-the-job training. So as I was on the job, they were training me through the National Council for the Training of Journalists. So that's the way I did it. I did on-the-job training, 3 years with the newspaper. Let's give them a big up. The Andover Advertiser newspaper, still going, I believe. Woo! And I still love the printed word. I know I've said that already, but I love things in print. So yeah, that's my thing. So I've done lots of things, and yes, I did become a DJ.
Too cool.
Very cool, very cool. Became a DJ for a year. I did a show on a local radio station called Hope FM, and I have my own show Monday nights called Supper with Nicky.
God, that's a bygone age, isn't it?
It was fun. It was a fun thing to try. I'm really glad that I did it. And I just want to say, you know, I agree with Laura. Do what you love. That's the thing, because you're going to be doing it a long time. Yeah. So you do what in your heart. Search your heart, and if that's the thing, go for the thing that's going to really give you joy. Because otherwise, you're doing it a long time. And it's very difficult. Yeah.
Fantastic. Right, some really good advice there. Gary, you look like you're going to say something.
No, I was just breathing.
Okay. keep going. Do you have any advice, any like do's or don'ts for our students?
Sorry, is it me? Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, this thing about being open to what comes. is really important. I mean, sometimes people get very fixed on a particular route that they feel that they definitely want to do. I've never been quite as well planned, I suppose, as that. But I think it is interesting being open to things that are offered, open to new things. Like Laura, I applied to study music and English together, but being a bit lazy in those days, probably still am. I ditched the English by the time I got to university and just stuck with the music. Not really knowing where that was going to lead at that point, but it was something I really felt I wanted to do. And it has actually stood me in good stead, because I've been involved in musical things ever since then in different ways. But just being open to looking outside, and particularly if there's any kind of outside pressure on you to do a particular role or a particular job, you think people say, oh, you'd be really good at that, and then you think, I'm not sure I would actually. Just try and look more widely, see what the possibilities are, but don't rule things out either, because lots of people say, oh, I never want to work for the church, and actually it can be quite good fun. So keep an open mind.
Yeah, we have fun, don't we? Great. We do. I'm looking at all these smiley faces. It's really lovely, actually. Jo, any advice?
So I would, off the back of what Gary just said there, be open, but also, particularly working for church, it is a thing that people come to often later in life. It's not their first thought. And I think that's statistically true, isn't it, Gary?
Yeah.
So, and it certainly wouldn't have been my first choice, but and that's why it's so actually even more wonderful, because you've been through this whole journey, and on this journey you're suddenly being led to a place where you think, oh, actually I really love this, and I've never done a job that I haven't loved. I can't imagine how anyone could do a job that they really don't love, but people do it all the time. In fact, I live with someone, he's very open about it. He says, I hate my job. I'm so jealous. I've never had a job which I love like you love your job. He says you give so much time to it because you just don't think about it. And so I think there has to be some passion in there. So whatever you choose to do, you've got to have to put your heart and soul into something. You have to feel passionate about it. That would be what I would say.
Right.
And the other thing, I think, so when I went into management in my previous role, that was so weird how that happened, because a friend of mine just phoned me up and she said, I want you to manage my training provision. I said, well, I've never done management, and I've never worked with children from this country, or not children, sorry, young people in that case. I never worked with young people from this country. I've never worked with vulnerable young people. I know nothing about safeguarding and so on and so forth. And she said to me, will you think about it? And I'd already applied for another job, actually, at the time, being a volunteer coordinator for the Red Cross. So this is really, it kind of came at a weird time, because I'd literally just put the application in for the other thing, and then I got this phone call. And I remember talking to Rich about it, my husband, and just saying, I just don't know. I really love to have a go at this. And I just went for it. And you have to do it. You have to jump both feet in sometimes.
Okay, that's great.
That's the bottom line. So yeah, that's my advice.
Really helpful. We haven't got a lot of time left. We've got another 10 minutes. So, but if we could be a little bit more concise, just so that we don't get. Sorry. Sorry, Jo. I wasn't meant, at you. Just off your banner. Laura, dig me out my hole.
Okay. So I've already said do what you love, and I would also say just believe in yourself and look at your skill set and see where, how you can put those to your best advantage. I think sometimes if you're a little bit frightened to do something and you might say, oh, I can't do that, like Jo was saying, those times when you push yourself out of your comfort zone are the times that I feel that I look back on and think, actually, I'm most proud of those moments. If I hadn't done that, I would be kicking myself. And there are other times when I think, I really wish I'd done that if I just believed in myself a little bit more. So believe in yourself is my other piece of advice.
Great. Thank you very much. And Nikki?
Well, these are all great pieces of advice. I don't know how I can add to them, really. I totally agree with them. I would just say also perhaps do something that you think might be fun. Do you think? Might that be something? Yeah.
Absolutely.
That you know you're going to enjoy, that's going to be fun, that's going to give you a sense of fulfillment. And for us as Christians and people that go to church, for us there was a huge part of our was a sense of calling is how we've ended up here, because we followed this real deep sense of calling that we've sensed that God is actually calling us onto these jobs and roles, which is how I personally came to be a woman priest, because I listened to lots of people I was interviewing for a newspaper I was working for called the Winchester Way newspaper, which was the Winchester Diocese newspaper. And I had the wonderful privilege of being able to interview some of the first women priests. And I was having lots of sort of wonderful experiences of feeling that God was saying to me, this is for you, this is for you, you know. And I kept thinking, what? No, that can't be, you know. I had no idea really that I wanted to be a priest, or that I would ever be a priest. But I was having this deep sort of sense of God with me, calling me on. And so that was the beginning of it for me. So from that sort of experience, I just couldn't get away from this strong sense of calling, which it took me another 20 years before I did anything about it. But it's been the best thing I've ever done.
Excellent. That's really good advice. This idea of calling, or we sometimes call it vocation, don't we? And people get the idea that they're being called to a vocation in medicine and that kind of thing when you're sort of helping other people. So it's definitely worth kind of listening out for that kind of sense of vocation. Has anyone got a funny anecdote for us to end on?
Well, I'd say one of the things that's most wonderful about the job that most of us do here is that we just meet so many different types of people. So we do weddings, funerals, baptisms, all sorts, schools, work, just everything. And years ago, when I was a curate, which is sort of the first step in the training, as it were, I did a wedding for a young couple called now this is why I get confused. See, even now 30 years later, it's Brett and Glenda. Brett and Glenda I did this wedding for, and they were very young. They were both in their teens, and I'd already baptised the baby. I had to get parents' permission because they were under 18, and halfway through the service, all these nervous young people, I called them Brett and Glenda, or no, Glet and Brenda. That's what I called them, Glet and Brenda. And once I'd said it, I couldn't get which way round it was. I got a bit flustered, and it was the best thing that could have happened because everyone was in hysterics by the end of this wedding, and it really broke the ice. It was absolutely fantastic, but it makes me get hot just thinking about it now.
That's interesting, isn't it? So it was a mistake, but it was the right mistake to make, kind of thing.
Perfect mistake, yeah.
Brilliant. We've got time for one more. If anyone's got one they'd like to share.
Oh, I've got a really great highlight. Yeah,
okay.
For me, if you're talking about highlights, the highlight so far for me has been dressing as a giant banana.
For a good purpose.
A very good purpose. I don't just dress as a banana normally, but I dressed as a giant fair trade banana to promote Fair Trade Fortnight last year, actually, and or was it 19? Wouldn't it have been? It was great fun, and just waving at everyone and seeing it. They knew kind of who was under there, I think, a lot of the people, because I'm a bit daft like that.
I actually remember walking past you and being a bit, what's she doing now? Brilliant. I think this is definitely the most fun careers chat we've had so far. So thank you ever so much, all of you, for your time. Really appreciated. So we better sign off.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kimberley.
Yeah.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.